Wait. What do you mean there's 2 characters being released on the same day? You mean I gotta make 2 videos?
How's it going, guys? CotC here, and welcome to my character overview for Stead. Stead is the second 5-star cleric being added to the game after Millard. He was originally released in JP ahead of the Glossum Cup as one of the units being pushed to use in that arena, and in EN they've decided to do the same. Stead is voiced by one of the biggest names in the world of Japanese voice acting, Yuki Kaji. He has some absolutely massive roles that you've definitely heard of, such as Eren from Attack on Titan, Todoroki from My Hero Academia, Issei from High School DxD, Seven Deadly Sins, Haikyuu, Noragami, Guilty Crown, Takagi-san, the list goes on and on. He's no stranger to Square Enix titles either, providing the voice of both Hope and Bunavelza in the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy, as well as Ace in Final Fantasy Type 0. Anyways, back to Stead. Stead is a Dark Cleric, with a greater emphasis on damage than his contemporary. Taking a look at his stats, his magic stat is quite high at 390, rivaling even some Scholars. However, compared to other caster type roles like Scholar and Dancer, he's a bit lower in the SP department, but not so low that I'd hold it against him. For his kit, let's start by looking at his passives and bleed skills, since those are central to his play pattern. His 3-star passive gives him 30% damage up as long as there's a bleeding enemy. This is a massive damage boost that basically substitutes for the element-specific damage up passive that you would see on Scholars like Sophia. However, the enemy isn't going to be bleeding all the time, which brings us to his 1-star passive. Whenever Stead is hit by a physical attack, he has a 50% chance to counter with a 1-hit staff attack that inflicts bleeding for 2 turns. This is a fantastic way to enable his damage boost passive. Now I'm sure some of you are thinking to yourself, isn't this an RNG passive like Honet's and Odette's? Would you suggest not taking this passive? And my answer is that you should definitely take this passive. The main reason you would want to bring Stead as a damage role is for dark magic, and we're going to bring him to fights where the enemy is weak to dark. They're not necessarily going to be weak to staff as well, which is what Stead strikes with for his counter. The damage boost from having a bleeding enemy is very strong and is part of what allows Stead to reach his full damage potential, and I definitely think it's worth taking the 1-star passive. Just remember to keep an eye on the enemy weaknesses. Next, let's move on to a couple skills that can inflict bleeding. He has both a 1-hit staff and 1-hit dark nuke with 170 power, and both have a medium chance to inflict bleeding. These are both pretty low impact moves. Neither of these are multi-hit, they have relatively low potency compared to Stead's best nuking option, and they're not even guaranteed to inflict bleeding on the enemy. For his standard dark attacking options, we have a 2-hit dark and a 260 dark nuke, which is only available at 5-star. These are your bread and butter dark attacks that I recommend taking whenever you're using Stead as an attacker. Their usage is very simple. Use the 2-hit for knocking shields away, and the 260 nuke when the enemy is broken for big damage. Now on to the utility side. Stead has 2 team-wide heal and regen skills. The first is unlocked by default and has a base potency of 55 on the heal with a potency of 80 on the regen. The second is unlocked at 5-star with a base potency of 65 and a potency of 90 on the regen. While this does technically make Stead the second 5-star regen caster after Teo, you have to remember that skills which both heal the party and grant regen do not get the duration increase when you apply BP. For that reason, Teo is still the king when it comes to the regen roll, since he can apply up to 5 turns with a single cast, whereas Stead can only apply 2 turns of regen with each of his. Additionally, Stead has access to an ordinary but effective 130 potency full front row heal, providing fast healing in a pinch. Some other utility pieces in Stead's kit include his full front row 15% magic up buff for 2 to 5 turns, and his 20% single enemy magic defense down debuff, also for 2 to 5 turns. These options can be very powerful when combined with some of the other powerful units that you would typically bring on teams, such as Lynette or Primrose. Either of these 2 units can stack their buffs or debuffs with Stead to reach the 30% cap, making them great allies. Stead has a lot of powerful options in his kit, making him a flexible unit if you want to use him for different situations. As a dark attacker, I obviously recommend taking his 2-hit dark and 260 nuke, along with a 3rd flex slot to suit your needs. If you are using him as an attacking unit, it's recommended to have a different unit be your designated healer. If you'd rather use him as a healing or supportive role, forgo his dark skills in favor of his utility options. For accessories, dark runes aren't going to be very useful as long as you can maintain bleeding on the enemy, since his passive will give you all of the damage up that you can hold. Instead, consider equipping raw stat accessories like magic up. For allies that pair well with Stead, you'd like to bring units that can inflict bleeding on the enemy so that Stead doesn't have to waste time doing it himself. A few units that can accomplish this are Rodion, Cedric, Scarecrow, and Camilla. Rodion in particular can be a great unit to pair with Stead on a Glossum team, since he can whack away with his 2-hit axe and look to inflict bleed at the same time. Additionally, Loomis, the other character being released at the same time as Stead, also has bleed on an AoE win skill, making her another good candidate to bring should you have both characters on your roster. I'm sure a lot of people are looking at Stead and Primrose and are just thinking to themselves, why would I use Stead when I could just use Prim? And the answer to that is, why not both? They're both very serviceable dark attackers, and when facing an enemy weak to dark, you'd prefer to have multiple units that can tackle the enemy weakness rather than just one. Additionally, Stead is a flexible unit that can play multiple roles depending on what you need, since his kit has multiple utility options. He's a pretty good unit if you want to try to fill a lot of holes at the same time, so don't underestimate him. And that concludes my character overview for Stead. He's not the easiest character to evaluate, so I hope you guys enjoyed my analysis. Alongside Stead's release is Loomis, the Apothecary, so if you haven't already checked out her overview, I'll leave a link to that down in the description for you guys to check out. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And until next time, this has been CotC. See ya!